Some of the creatures on this list have been well identified for years, while others remain a mystery. Try to imagine how you would react if somehow you found face to face with each of these giants, or better yet, how would you survive?
Chills.
Number 10. Luis checks the mail. Luis Camacho is getting his mail one sunny day when he suddenly stops and looks around. It's hard to describe, but somehow his surroundings feel different and mysterious. He soon locates the source of his bad feeling. After getting onto his hands and knees and peering into the sewer grate, this is what he sees down a long tunnel. A giant alligator looks back at him, its mouth wide open. It lets out a ferocious hiss as a warning sign not to come any closer. The two of them hold eye contact, and then Luis quickly backs away to call the authorities. The alligator was removed shortly thereafter, but Luis will never forget how close he came to having to fight for his survival. It would have been a struggle that he probably would not have won. One more thing, look closely at the tape. And you'll see a small green ball resting by the alligator. I can't help but wonder if, moments before this recording, a small child or dog went to retrieve the ball and saw the same thing that Luis did. Number 9. The Curious Blob. This footage, taken from a British oil rig, looks fairly normal until a massive monster slowly rises from the depths of the sea. Its shimmering, shapeless body is both mysterious and mesmerizing as it glides across the ocean with a silky stride. The camera person excitedly pans around to keep the beast in their sights. Unable to believe what they are witnessing, the formless monster hangs around the rig for a while before losing interest in moving on. When this video first surfaced, most people thought that it had to be part of a whale, but that theory proved incorrect. Scientists said that part of the whale was too nutritious to float around the ocean for very long and that it would be eaten almost immediately. They were eventually able to identify the creature as a giant jellyfish called the Deepstaria reticulum. Number 8. The largest gator ever. Imagine being on a nature preserve and seeing this scaly monstrosity walk directly in your path.
This gator had quite the audience yesterday at Circle B Bar Reserve in Polk County. Kim Joyner is sharing this video with us. Thanks, Kim. And you can see the gator slowly walking across the grass.
That's exactly what happened to the visitors of the Circle B Bar Reserve in Polk County, Florida. Fortunately for them, the alligators seemed to be more concerned with finding water than finding food. The largest Florida alligator on record is a little over 14 feet long, but wildlife resource officials believe that the alligator in this video could have been larger. The only problem is that they are too afraid to get an official measurement, and I honestly can't say that I blame them. Number 7. Leviathan hears a giant. A YouTuber named Leviathan is on a hiking trip when he hears strange noises in the distance. Just when he seriously suspects that he's not alone in the woods, a series of large footprints confirms his suspicions. He now fears for his safety and has already decided to leave when he hears the same noises again, much closer now than before. The predatory call encourages him to make a quick retreat back to civilization. Leviathan still has no idea what was making this noise or exactly how large it was. Number 6. The slimy find. These gigantic slimy mollusks are hunted in the Philippines for their strange shells, which resemble an elephant's tusk and sell for around $200 a piece. Scientists have been finding their hollowed out shells for years, but only recently did they get their hands on an actual specimen for further study. When they cracked open its shell for a closer look, this is what came slithering out. The 5-foot-long creature flops out of its casing and stinks up the room. It was found in a sulfur-rich mud pool where it had been feasting on putrid bacteria for years. Who knows what else researchers will find at that location. Number 5. The construction worker discovery. Construction workers in Brazil were performing a demolition job when they came across the flattened remains of a 33-foot anaconda. If you want to get a better feel for how gigantic this snake is, just count how many seconds it takes them to film the reptile's entire body. Not much more information about this story is available, but then again, not much more information is required. This is a gigantic snake that, given the opportunity, would have little problem squeezing your ribs until they cracked and making you its next meal. Number 4. Stalked and eaten. If you ever travel to the Indonesian islands, be on the lookout for these 150-pound human hunting lizards. The Komodo dragon has a never-ending appetite that allows them to eat up to 120 pounds in a single meal. In other words, they can eat something that's 80% of their own body weight without much of a problem. They will even eat humans if they become desperate enough for food, which is surprisingly often. They have been known to ambush stray tourists on trails and have even gone after entire villages. In 2007, for example, an 8-year-old boy was hunted by a Komodo dragon. He did not survive. Other famous incidents include a Komodo dragon who ate the top of a person's foot while they were visiting the Los Angeles Zoo. Number 3. The sky creature. This footage was reportedly taken on a flight somewhere over Zambia. A person is casually recording out their window when a giant humanoid creature starts to materialize in the distance. The creature seems to keep pace and ride alongside them for a moment before disengaging and twisting away. The obvious answer to this is CGI. If it's not CGI, however, then what this creature could be is anyone's guess. Number 2. The Beijing sighting. This footage supposedly comes from the capital of China, where a massive, slow-moving creature makes its way across the polluted city landscape. It's hard to tell how many legs this giant creature has, or what its overall intentions are. It doesn't seem to be that aggressive, but the ground shakes under its gigantic steps, and army helicopters circle above, obviously ready. According to the uploader, this footage was suppressed by the Chinese government, who has a tight grip on all forms of news and social media. This could very likely be CGI, but if it's real, then there is no information as to how this situation was ultimately resolved. Before we get to number 1, if you've ever been curious as to what I look like in real life, then follow me on Instagram at DylanIsChillinYT with underscores instead of spaces. I also have a Twitter at YT_chills where I post video updates. I'd really appreciate it if you followed me, and feel free to send me a DM if you have any questions or suggestions. If you'd like to see more of these videos in the future, then hit that subscribe button because I upload a new video every Thursday. Number 1. The Barbados Impossibility. The uploader of this video says that this sighting happened on the Barbados Islands sometime in 2017. A huge humanoid is stomping off in the horizon, its footsteps echoing throughout the tropical night scenery. The creature appears to have 4 long limbs and a gigantic bushy upper body that is completely covered in some kind of fur or else some kind of plant growth, possibly leaves or mold. It lets out a huge bellowing roar as it makes its way across the island. In the unlikely case this is not CGI, then what you are witnessing is definitely a modern day giant or some sort, though its true origins may never be fully understood. Thanks for checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe because I upload a new video every Thursday. Or if you're still not convinced, here are some of my other videos that I think you'd like. Enjoy! Many ecosystems are still too dangerous for us to fully map out and explore, and with unknown environments comes the possibility of unknown creatures. Whether the footage on this list is real or not is up to you to decide. Either way, be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Chills. Number 20. The Bridge Walker. A person in Ukraine was filming a calm river one evening just in time to capture a humanoid-looking creature cross underneath of a bridge using all fours. As the footage shows, something is grabbing onto the underside of a bridge and silently making its way across. Exactly what the creature is remains a debate online to this day. Some people have pointed out that this could be a human, but others have noticed how its legs and arms appear to be the exact same length. It almost looks like it could be an animal, but I'm not aware of any animal from this region that likes to hang upside down from bridges. Besides, if someone had to go underneath a bridge like that for whatever reason, then they would either hang from their arms or else hug the bridge tightly while creeping across. This thing, on the other hand, just swings across the bottom like it's no big deal. Human or not, this thing definitely has a very bizarre center of gravity as it moves. Number 19. Slenderman. A British YouTuber is making a video to show off how fast his new bike is. After a short video explanation, he takes off down the road. A short while later, this happens. The figure in this video appears to be the Slenderman, a long-limbed humanoid in a black suit who is often seen lingering in the background of videos. It's said that he primarily hunts children. Although he is probably made up, some say that having enough people believe in him has now caused the myth to come to life. Then its child killer is alive and well. The biker returns to the camera a short while later. He is breathing hard now from his short ride. Somehow he doesn't even notice the Slenderman slowly walking around in the background. Eventually, a car stops to warn him about the long-legged figure walking around in the field. Only then he reviews the footage and spots the creature, at which he uploads this recording straight to YouTube. Number 18. The Florida Sea Beast. Gene Sourwine has been fishing off the Florida coast for hours now, and he's about to call it a day. He casts his line into the gently bobbing blue waters one last time and starts to patiently reel it in. That's when he sees it, something in the ocean. He can't see its whole body, only brief glimpses. It looks giant, as in prehistoric size. Suddenly a snake-like head surfaces and goes back under the water. But Gene can tell this is no snake. For one thing, this monster has a huge round body and webbed fins. It's easily over 14 feet long and looks to weigh more than a ton.
Here you see the back out of the water, and since there's not a dorsal fin on it, it's unlikely that it would be some kind of dolphin.
Gene is watching something incredible, but he knows that he needs both video evidence and a witness for anyone to take this seriously. So he goes back to the mainland and grabs his brother and a camera. They rush back to the same location and start filming again, hoping that the sea creature hadn't moved on while they were away. As the footage shows, their sea monster most certainly had not gone anywhere. As much as they have tried, experts and internet critics alike cannot explain exactly what this footage is. Now, I'm not saying that this is 100% real, but I'm also saying that I personally can't tell if it's fake either. This even made it onto an episode of Monster Quest on the History Channel, and nobody could explain it on there either. Coincidentally, there are reports in the 1800s of sailors seeing huge monsters around the waters of Jacksonville, Florida. These creatures had huge bodies and serpent-like heads. They were also quite aggressive and would chase the boats for miles. Could this be video evidence of the sailors' claims hundreds of years later? Number 17. The Alaskan Water Assassin. There's a lot of questionable videos on the internet, but here's one with a very legitimate source. This footage was taken by the Alaskan Bureau of Land Management and posted on their Facebook page. Swimming in the chilly waters is what some believe is a distant relative of the Loch Ness Monster. Others say that this creature wasn't really moving at all and that it was probably a floating piece of rope. Even if it was staying in place, a lot of sea animals are known to remain stationary for long periods of time, so that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not real. Only Mother Nature knows for sure, and she's not telling. Number 16. The Cave Creature. Most people agree that this video is probably CGI, but there's still a large portion of the internet that believes it is authentic, so let's take a closer look. It was supposedly taken somewhere in Colombia in 2011. The first thing to indicate that this could be fake is the dramatic music. Also, the sound effects don't seem particularly realistic. Still, the original sound seems to have been lost long ago, so maybe this is authentic footage that has been heavily edited over the years. Anyway, the cave explorer flashes his light on something that appears to be sleeping on the cave floor. I have to admit that these are some pretty convincing special effects if this is fake, especially for 6 years ago. The lighting looks very good, the camera angles look staged, but then again, it is possible that they were shooting some sort of home movie when they accidentally came across this cave creature. Whoever filmed this doesn't seem to be coming forward, so we'll likely never know if it's real or fake for sure. Number 15. The Albino Sasquatch. This footage was taken in 2011. A man is wandering the woods in Pennsylvania when his flashlight chances upon one of the most popular humanoids of all time. The Sasquatch is devoid of pigment and doesn't put up much of a fight, instead taking off as soon as the flashlight beam hits its face. Notice not only how fast it runs, but also how silently it moves. Somehow it was able to watch the cameraman from less than 10 feet away and get away with hardly any noise. Number 14. Homunculus. The homunculus is rumored to be an artificial type of creature that was first discovered sometime during the medieval ages by the way of alchemy. The recipe for this legend has since been lost, but some YouTubers have claimed to have rediscovered a way after doing some tinkering in their kitchen. The process used to create a homunculus is kind of gross. You can look it up if you want, but all I will say is that it involves fertilizing a chicken egg using a syringe. Next, you seal the egg off in a plastic container and keep it warm by wrapping it up in a cloth. For some reason, you also have to keep the area very dark. Perhaps this has something to do with witchcraft. No one can touch or disturb the egg in the slightest. You can't even look at it. If you do, you will kill the homunculus before it can hatch. After enough time has passed, about 10 days or so, you remove the egg from its container. The egg appears to have developed some sort of infection, but this could also be some normal part of the process. The YouTuber cracks open the disgusting egg, and this is what he finds laying inside.
Вот он наглядно виден, но это существо, конечно же, не может обладать какой-то высокоразвитой формой интеллекта. В лучшем случае это что-то на уровне амебы или там, может быть, медузы.
This tiny creature has no discernible features except for some long tendrils attached to a shriveled up central body. It looks like a chewed up white piece of gum, except it moves. Apparently, they are no smarter than a jellyfish. Maybe the ones from medieval times were more advanced. There's videos out there that tries to prove the homunculus experiment is fake, but then again, maybe they didn't do it right. Maybe they didn't wait long enough or else made some noise. The process is reportedly very delicate and can take at least a couple tries to master. Number 13. The Russian Yeti. A Russian police officer is roaming the snowy countryside when he comes in close contact with a creature that has since never been identified. The officer is traveling at a low rate of speed when suddenly something huge dashes across his headlights. The strange figure is only visible for a moment, then it's gone. Many YouTubers suspect this to be a Russian Yeti. Others are sure that it's a man in a suit or even someone who is completely naked, though this theory is hard to believe because a person in Russia would probably freeze to death if they stood outside naked for very long. Look closely and you'll see that whatever it is, it's moving quite fast. It only takes the thing about 5 or 6 steps to fully get away, and I should mention that the snowbanks on both sides of the tracks appear to be very deep. An average-sized person would be struggling way more to get over them. Zoom in and you'll see what looks to be white fur hanging off of its body. Also, it looks to be hunched over and its arms almost touch the ground. If this is a costume, it's very convincing. Number 12, the lizard bird. This happened somewhere in Monterrey, Mexico, and was witnessed by dozens of people. It was so bizarre that it even made the local news. Flying high in the sky was some sort of aggressive creature the townsfolk had not seen before. It looked like some sort of hawk, but when it got closer, they could see that it was something else completely. Local wildlife officials were able to eventually wrestle it into captivity, but not without a fight. This is exactly what they saw.
Tan solo se trataba de un ave no muy conocida y de apariencia extraña, lo que ocasionó el temor de los vecinos del lugar.
The creature looks like a bird, but it has no beak. Instead, its mouth opens up like some sort of frog or lizards. Could this be some sort of reptilian bird hybrid? Number 11, the Icelandic sea monster. A man in Iceland seems to have video evidence of a possible local creature that is not unlike the Loch Ness Monster in Scotland. Like so many others who witness unknown creatures, this person was innocently filming the native scenery when something unexpected happened to come across the camera. In this case, what appears to be a 20 or 30 foot long sea serpent winds across the icy waters, barely poking above the surface. This could be a piece of floating sea garbage, or even a fishing net, but others insist that its side-winding movement is undeniably snake-like. It looks very predatory. If it was a piece of debris, it would move with the current. However, this one seems to zigzag against it at times. Number 10, the humanoid zoo. This footage was taken by an American tourist who was visiting Romania. He was just walking around a local zoo on his own, checking out the sights when he hears about a new attraction that is unlike any of the others. He is ushered into a dark farmhouse along with some other curious observers. Almost immediately, the tone of the video changes from skeptical to serious. It's hard to say exactly how, but something just feels wrong all of a sudden. You can hear the villagers talking among themselves, excitedly as they push past. Farm animals are making noises as the American makes his way deeper inside. This section is very dark now, and even though the Romanians are speaking in a different language, you can tell that people are sounding worried and concerned as they come closer and closer to the main attraction. Finally, the American tourist sees it for himself. Sitting across from them on a straw floor is what appears to be a white humanoid creature with black eyes and a wide gap for a mouth. It makes a series of tortured gurgling sounds and then charges towards its cage as the video quickly ends. It's hard to tell if this is a real creature or a man in a suit because the lighting is very dim. At the same time, Romania is a very rural country, and anything could be lurking in the woods. Maybe someone really did capture this thing and drag it back to society to be gawked at by paying crowds. If this thing is real, then the poor humanoid sounds like it's been severely mistreated and probably needs help. Number 9, Monster Crossing. This highway footage comes from Britain and is about 10 years old. It looks like just another normal night until an unknown creature comes scampering across 4 lanes of traffic in less than 5 seconds. It almost looks like a deer or dog at first, but a closer look shows you that its legs bend inwards at an odd angle. Its front and back legs nearly touch as it runs, almost like a cheetah, but such an animal, of course, is impossible to see in a place like Britain. The YouTube community seems to be split on this one. Some people insist that it's CGI, but others say that the footage is authentic. Even when zoomed and slowed down, the monster appears to jump over the median at the right time and narrowly avoids getting hit by the car. No other cameras have managed to pick it up since, or if they did, then the footage was never released to the public. Number 8. It came from Area 51. A group of friends are poking around just outside of the legal limits of Area 51 when they make a strange discovery. At first, the creature appears to blend in with the scenery, but look closely and you can make out a long head and a curly tail.
Super slow too. What is that, dude? Did you just change shape? Yes. Look at this, dude. Look, look, look.
The creature stands up and appears to turn towards them. It must have a very good sense of hearing because its body language suggests that it has been startled by them. Suddenly, it disappears in a thin lay of bright white light, never to be seen again. If aliens can escape this easily, it's no wonder why they have rarely been filmed. Another explanation for this video, of course, is the possibility of CGI. Number 7, the forest creeper. A group of men in Brazil are swimming in a local watering hole on a warm day. One of them gets out of the water and is about to jump in when the cameraman suddenly spots something standing behind them. Pay attention to the dark hole on the left.
Vem atrás aí.
The creature peeks out at them and then ducks away before the man can turn around. As they are curiously looking into the forest, the creature jumps across and runs away.
Sai daí, sai daí, sai daí, mano. Quer me afastar? Sai daí. Sai daí. Vai lá. Bora.
This is no ordinary forest animal. Zoom in close and you can barely see a small set of human-like legs. It looks to almost be as scared as everyone else as it retreats deeper into the forest. The quality of this video is poor, but the cell phone cameras aren't the greatest in the Brazilian countryside. It could be real or just special effects. Number 6. Les Alien. This footage is believed to have been shot somewhere in France. It starts out with a UFO sitting on the hillside that quickly flies away. The next shot shows it hovering in the air, and then we are shown this footage of what appears to be a group of aliens conversing on the ground. It looks like they are talking about whatever it is aliens talk about as they casually observe their surroundings. Maybe they were talking about technical difficulties with their ship, or else they were simply stretching their legs between planets. It doesn't look like they are aware that they are being recorded. The UFO again takes off and disappears in a beam of light. Number 5. Mystery Corpse. It's large, round, and dead, but what is it? This unknown creature washed ashore the beaches of New York sometime around 2012. A lot of people are saying that it's just a washed up raccoon, but experts are saying no way. First of all, this creature looks like it has a beak-like jawbone, which raccoons obviously do not. The limbs are too short for a raccoon, and the skull is shaped way differently. Keep in mind that this is not my opinion. This is the opinion of Rebecca Alexis Turner, a person who has been working with possums, raccoons, and other forms of wildlife for years. So again, if it's not a raccoon or a possum, then what could it be? Who knows? Hopefully you'll never have a live one charge at you and find out. Number 4. The Kitchen Goblin. A mother in Argentina caught this strange sighting on tape while watching her son Benjamin play in the kitchen. The toddler is babbling away happily when suddenly a tiny creature runs across the kitchen floor. It starts out running around the corner and quickly disappears under the dresser. The mother says that this goblin stank horribly as it ran outside to their garden. She often hears Benjamin talking by himself in his room, but now she believes that he may have been communicating with the goblins. She thought the creature was a mouse at first, but after she saw it was running on only 2 legs, she didn't know what to think of it. Apparently, she claims to have captured the goblins on tape no less than 5 times, though this is the only video footage that has surfaced. Number 3. The English Mermaid. Otherwise known as aquatic humanoids, mermaids have been long suspected of existing deep beneath the seas, though no credible video evidence has ever surfaced. Paul Jones was walking along the beach in Great Yarmouth when he makes this brutal discovery. A half-decayed mermaid laid rotting in the wet sand right before his very eyes. It had the scaly body of a fish right up to the mid-torso, at which point the upper body of the creature suddenly changed into that of a human. It was just like the legends had always said. The video and photography clearly shows that the washed up creature has human-like arms, which it probably used to paddle through the water, which is being propelled by a giant tail fin. The center of the mermaid corpse appears to have been hollowed out, probably eaten by a large predator. Its face is mostly rotten, but a grim expression gives the impression that it could have died in agony. If you look closely, you can still see both of the mermaid's unblinking eyes stare back at you. Number 2. The Dog Hunter. This video starts out as a normal shot of what looks like a restaurant in another country. The footage is pretty high quality. Nothing looks out of the ordinary, right? Well, pay close attention to the small dog as it passes through the frame. You'll probably see something walking closely behind. If you didn't see it, watch the footage again in slow motion. You'll see the dog walk out from behind the motorcycle. It's just sniffing around, minding its own business, when suddenly a transparent apparition comes stomping out from behind. Okay, what the heck is that? It looks like a demon or a reptile from another dimension walking on 2 legs. It's following the dog closely, almost like it wants the dog for its next meal. Nobody else seems to have seen the creature, but its electromagnetic frequencies appear to have been captured on tape. Skeptics are quick to say that this is just the dog's reflection, but if that were true, then shouldn't the reflection look similar to the original animal? This creature, on the other hand, has a long tail, 2 legs, and what almost appears to be T-Rex arms. I guess it kind of looks like the dog, but at the same time, doesn't there also look like there's some major differences to you? Before we get to number 1, if you've ever been curious as to what I look like in real life, then follow me on Instagram at DylanIsChillinYT with underscores instead of spaces. I also have a Twitter at YT_chills where I post video updates. I'd really appreciate it if you followed me, and feel free to send me a DM if you have any questions or suggestions. If you'd like to see more of these videos in the future, then hit that subscribe button because I upload a new scary video every Thursday. Number 1. The Oddling. This video was taken in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico sometime in 2015. The person filming had been hearing loud disturbances all around his house and grabbed a camera before running outside. He is trying to track the source of the movement. It sounds almost like a squeaky trampoline. Nervous birds are chattering loudly nearby. The cameraman zooms in on some of his backyard plants, but whatever is making the noise isn't hiding there. Suddenly, a series of loud bangs come from directly above. He swings the camera around, and this is what he finds. What would you do in this situation? Maybe you'd scream, run for cover, or even grab a weapon. This cameraman stands frozen in place, however, too shocked to make a sound. Suddenly, the humanoid creature scrambles over the roof and makes a hasty escape. The person runs into the house and gets away. Both of them appear to be equally afraid of each other. If this long skinny creature is not CGI, then what could it possibly be? Thanks for checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe because I upload a new scary video every Thursday. Or if you're still not convinced, here are some of our other videos that I think you'd like. Enjoy!
Have you ever thought about sailing the open sea alone? Would you ever want to? For many of us, it might sound like fun, exciting, or simply relaxing to take some time away from our day-to-day lives, like enjoying a nice vacation. Perhaps picturing yourself on a boat with beautiful sunshine and salty sea air is appealing to you. Either that, or maybe just the idea makes you seasick. Whatever your case may be, most of us can probably agree that sailing is one thing, but being stranded out in the open ocean alone is far less than ideal. Should anything like this happen to you, your chances of survival are slim. No one knows this better than a man who has experienced it firsthand. In 1981, after enduring a divorce from his wife, Stephen Callahan was driven by ambition and an adventurous spirit. He decided that he wanted to sail the treacherous Atlantic Ocean in his 21-foot boat called the Napoleon Solo, a fitting name given his desire to undertake the voyage entirely by himself. At first, his trip was going smoothly. He began his long journey from Newport, Rhode Island, first sailing to Bermuda. From there, he set sail to England. He continued onward, eventually making his way to the Caribbean island of Antigua. From there, his boat suffered heavy damage from some bad weather. Luckily though, he managed to make the necessary repairs and move forward with his grand trip. He persisted on through Spain and Portugal, coming out near Madeira in the Canary Islands. It was when he departed the Canary Islands on his way back to Antigua when disaster struck. In January 1982, just a week after his departure, the Napoleon Solo was stricken, presumably by a whale. This caused severe damage and Callahan was forced to abandon his boat. With no time to think, he frantically prepared his lifeboat while simultaneously trying to gather as many supplies as he could. He had to dive repeatedly back into his sinking boat to retrieve vital items for survival. This was made all the more difficult considering that he couldn't see anything while under the water and had to navigate his boat by memory. He had no choice but to locate items by feeling around for them. Imagine for a moment having to race against the clock to pack whatever you can for survival, knowing full well that what you choose to grab could mean the difference between life and death. Now also imagine that you're forced to do this while blindfolded. Anyone would probably feel the need to panic in this scenario. Your adrenaline would surely be pumping. your heart racing out of your chest. Yet if you want to survive, you don't have time to give in to trepidation. That's probably how Callahan felt during his moment of sheer crisis. In his haste, Callahan managed to procure a fishing line, water purifier, and a spear gun. For food, he gathered mostly scraps like peanuts and raisins, eggs, cabbage, corned beef, baked beans, and 8 ounces of water. With what he was able to grab, however, his supplies would only last him about 2.5 weeks. From then on, he was without much of anything. 800 miles west of the Canaries, completely isolated and adrift on a raft in the middle of the open ocean. Surely, he should have been doomed by this point. He had only his wits to rely upon. With very few resources available to him, he had to develop a means to survive. He mostly fished and occasionally hunted for birds. He had no way to cook his food, however, so he had to eat everything raw. Consider that the next time you feel the need to complain about your food being overcooked. For Callahan, during his desperate time, overcooked meals would have been a luxury. Though he had grabbed a water purifier, it turned out to be ineffective at converting seawater, so he had to rig a system of balloons and tarps to catch rainwater. With this, he was only able to secure about 20 ounces of water per day, but this was just barely enough to keep him alive. Callahan was forced to revert to old-fashioned navigational techniques, creating a sextant out of pencils. A sextant is a device used to measure the horizon and celestial objects like stars and planets. He used this tool in order to roughly estimate where he was and where to steer his raft. He used the North Star as his guide to aim his raft toward the West Indies, hoping to run into help along the way. After so many weeks adrift at sea, Callahan's raft became its own miniature ecosystem. A colony of barnacles began to grow on the bottom of it, which attracted fish that he would then catch and eat. Unfortunately, these fish also attracted sharks that would continuously circle his raft. They served as a constant reminder of the dangerous situation he was in. One might presume that one of the sharks would have grown impatient and taken a bite out of Callahan's raft to deflate it. But no, it was actually a fish that almost sank him. While he was fishing one day, his catch ripped a hole through the bottom of his raft. Callahan had to perform rushed repairs with his arms under the water and an encompassing circle of sharks surrounding him. Keeping his boat afloat while simultaneously trying to repair it was a full-time job. It must have been exhausting. Throughout the entirety of his ordeal, around 7 ships passed within his vicinity. 2 of them were less than a mile away. Callahan desperately tried to signal them using a flare gun and emergency radio beacon to gain their attention. But his attempts ended in failure. He felt utterly helpless and became increasingly depressed. Though his raft was rated a 6-man inflatable, it still felt cramped after a while. On top of everything, he endured fierce storms, battled huge waves, and fought against extreme loneliness. With each passing day, his chances of survival were also growing more and more bleak. On the morning of his 76th day adrift, a group of fishermen spotted him just off the southeastern coast of Guadalupe. Finally, he was rescued. By this point, though, Callahan had lost 40 pounds and was covered in painful open sores from his constant exposure to the sun and seawater. One might think that after enduring all this, Callahan would have succumbed to post-traumatic stress disorder and wished to remain silent on his frightening experience, but this was not the case. Callahan recounted his days at sea in his book, Adrift: 76 Days Lost at Sea, which was on the New York Times bestseller list in 1986 for more than 36 weeks. His memoir was also used in the television documentary series I Shouldn't Be Alive, which aired on November 17, 2010, about 29 years after he was rescued in the Caribbean. His ordeal made him somewhat of an expert on ocean survival, and so he was contacted to act as an advisor for the 2012 film Life of Pi, which, if you don't already know, is about a young boy trapped on a raft in the middle of the ocean with a tiger. Callahan made props for the film, including lures and other tools seen in the movie. He mentioned that the film was so realistic that he found it difficult to watch. Thankfully, though, Callahan didn't have to deal with the added threat of a tiger on top of everything else he endured during his experience. After recovering from his living nightmare at sea, Callahan also decided to use the knowledge of what he had learned to help develop a design for an improved life raft. He called the design the Clam and created it as a utility raft equipped with a canopy to shield from prolonged exposure to the sun, as well as to use for collecting rainwater. He did this so that if others somehow wound up in the same dangerous situation, they'd at least have an easier time through the ordeal than he did. As an author, naval architect, inventor, and sailor, Stephen Callahan is an interesting person, to say the least. With everything set against him on his 76-day venture alone at sea, he survived using his ingenuity and determination. Usually, waking up because you have to go to the bathroom is annoying, but on May 26, 2013, waking up and leaving his bunk to use the bathroom was a decision that saved 29-year-old Harrison Ojegba Okene's life. Through an odd twist of fate, Harrison ended up being the lone survivor of a boat sinking at sea. He can lay claim to a unique title. He's the only person in the world to have survived on the seafloor for nearly 3 days. The Gulf of Guinea in the southeast Atlantic Ocean is rich with petroleum-laden layers of sedimentary seabed. Many offshore oil rig drilling operations dot the African coast here. On May 26th, about 20 miles off of Escravos, Nigeria, in choppy seas, 3 tugboats pitched and yawed as they performed tension tow functions on a Chevron oil tanker filling up at single buoy mooring number 3. Just before 5 a.m., the tugboat Jascon 4 was caught by a large rogue wave and capsized. Because of ongoing piracy problems in the Gulf, security protocol on the tugboat was that the 12-man crew would lock themselves in their room when sleeping. Unfortunately, this rule slowed down the Jascon 4's crew when they tried to escape. The crew members had to first scramble out of their cabins, that is, except for the vessel's cook, Harrison, who had gotten up to use the bathroom in his underwear. When the tugboat keeled over and the ocean rushed in, Harrison had to force the bathroom's metal door open against the wall of water. The pressure of the water was extremely strong and Harrison was unable to follow some of his colleagues to the emergency hatch. He watched in horror as a surge overwhelmed 3 crew members and swept him out of the boat into the raging sea. Then the water pushed Harrison down a narrow hallway into another bathroom which adjoined an officer's cabin. Dazed and bruised but miraculously still alive, Harrison held onto an overturned wash basin to keep his head above water in the 4-foot square bathroom. The boat sank nearly 100 feet, eventually coming to rest upside down on the seabed. When the tugboat capsized, there was an immediate rescue operation launched with the other boats in the area and a helicopter. A diving crew quickly located the wreck and marked the location with buoys. They banged on the hull. Harrison hammered back, but they didn't hear him. As the divers weren't prepared for deep diving, they could only stay at the depth of the wreck for a limited period of time. The rescue was called off due to no evidence of survivors. After nearly a day of being in the bathroom, Harrison got up the courage to leave his little air pocket. In pitch darkness, he swam and felt his way into the engineer's office. Miraculously, there was another air pocket here too, of about 4 feet high in Harrison's estimation. Having solved the immediate problem of having air to breathe, Harrison could focus on other concerns. The first one being that he was cold. In May, the surface temperature of the East Atlantic on average is a pleasant 81.9 degrees Fahrenheit, but Harrison was 100 feet down. Shivering, wet, and wearing only boxer shorts, Harrison faced hypothermia, or his body losing heat faster than he could produce it. Cautiously, Harrison felt his way around the cabin. He found some tools and used them to strip off wall paneling. With a mattress and the material from the wall, he was able to make a platform to sit on. This platform helped Harrison to stay afloat and lifted the upper half of his body out of the water, allowing him to reduce heat loss. Hungry, thirsty, cold, and stuck in complete darkness, Harrison was terrified. He tried to think about his family. Quite religious, whenever he felt especially scared, Harrison would pray and call on Jesus to rescue him. Over time, the seawater began to remove the skin from Harrison's tongue. He could smell something rotting. He thought it was the decomposing bodies of his former shipmates. Every small sound in the dark was magnified. The creaking of the hull, the banging of the wreckage against the walls, and most horrifically, splashing and eating noises as fishes nibbled at corpses. Meanwhile, a dive support vessel, the Luek Toucan, arrived to the area of the sinking. The parent company of the Jascon 4, West African Ventures, had hired a deep-sea salvage saturation diving team from subsea services company DCN Global to retrieve the bodies of the lost crew members. The 6 divers, deck crew, and technical staff of the Luek Toucan knew it was going to be a grueling mission. Aside from the heart-rending work of recovering the dead, the boat had sunk upside down into soft mud, stirring up fine silt and creating extremely poor visibility. Furthermore, because of the security protocols, the boat was latched from the inside. Dive Team 2 consisted of Nico van Heerden, Andre Erasmus, and Daryl Oosthuizen, with Supervisor Colby Ware topside on the ship, helping to guide the divers via a connected microphone while watching the dive through a camera worn by Nico. The team spent over an hour breaking through an external watertight door and then a second metal door to get into the sunken boat. Once inside, it was extremely disorienting, with the ceiling being on the bottom and the floor overhead. The murky water was filled with all sorts of hazards, including furniture and equipment. Slowly, Painstakingly, the divers explored the boat. They'd recovered 4 corpses when Nico crawled up the stairs to the main deck. It was a tight squeeze with the diving gear on his back. He was in a small passageway getting his bearings when something suddenly reached out of the murk and touched him. Harrison had nearly given up hope when he had heard a noise that sounded like an anchor dropping. Then eventually he heard hammering on the hull of the boat. He knew it had to be divers. He banged on the wall but didn't think they heard him. Then Harrison saw the light from one of the divers' head torches as he swam through the hallway past the far end of the cabin. Unfortunately, the diver was too quick and left the area before Harrison could reach him. But then came the magical moment. You may have seen the surreal, amazing rescue footage from Nico's video when he sees what he believes is another dead body. He touches the corpse's hand, and the hand unexpectedly squeezes his. Nico has a momentary freak out as his supervisor Colby shouts through the microphone, "He's alive! He's alive!" Colby then tells Nico to comfort Harrison by patting him on the shoulder and giving him a thumbs up sign. The divers were amazed to find Harrison alive. The maximum depth for recreational diving is 130 feet. Generally, recreational divers don't stay at 100 feet for more than 20 minutes. In terms of the air pocket, the divers had reached Harrison just in time. A human inhales roughly 350 cubic feet of air every 24 hours. However, because the boat was under pressure on the ocean floor, scientists estimate that Harrison's air pocket had been compressed by a factor of about 4. If the pressurized air pocket were about 216 cubic feet, it would contain enough oxygen to keep Harrison alive for about 2.5 days. When Harrison was located, he had been underwater for about 60 hours. An additional danger came from the carbon monoxide or CO2 buildup. CO2 is fatal to humans at a concentration of about 5%. As Harrison breathed, he exhaled carbon dioxide, slowly increasing the levels of the gas in the tiny space. However, CO2 is absorbed by water, and by splashing the water inside his air pocket, Harrison inadvertently increased the water's surface area, thereby heightening the absorption of CO2 and helping to keep the gas below the lethal 5% level. The divers describe Harrison as having CO2 poisoning, being short of breath and delirious when they found him. He wouldn't have lasted much longer. The divers first used hot water to warm Harrison up, then fitted him with an oxygen mask. Meanwhile, on the surface, the dive support crew was in contact with medical and diving experts, discussing how to best help the survivor. Harrison had a new problem, what divers commonly call the bends. The bends, also known as decompression sickness or caisson disease, occurs when nitrogen bubbles form in the blood as a result of changes in pressure. If Harrison ascended directly from 100 feet underwater to the surface of the ocean, the bubbles in his blood would cause, in the best case, joint pain and rashes, to the worst case, paralysis, neurological issues, cardiac arrest, or possibly even death. It was decided that Harrison would be treated as if he were one of the saturation divers coming up after a dive. Harrison spent about 20 minutes getting used to breathing through the mask. Then the divers put a diving helmet and harness onto him. They were a little worried that he would panic as they got him out of the boat and would be a danger to the dive, but Harrison continued to be cool under pressure. The team was impressed with his level demeanor. Harrison was taken from the boat and led to a diving bell, which took him to the surface. He finally arrived topside at around 7 p.m. on Tuesday, the 28th of May. Disoriented, Harrison thought that it was Sunday evening and that he had only been trapped for 12 hours. He was shocked to learn that he'd been underwater for over 2 days. From the diving bell, Harrison was moved to a decompression chamber where he stayed for another 2.5 days while his body decompressed to surface pressure. Of the 12 crew members on board the tugboat Jascon 4, divers rescued 1 survivor and recovered 10 of the bodies. The search for the 11th crew member had to be called off due to dangerous conditions. Harrison made a full recovery from his ordeal and returned to his hometown of Warri, Nigeria. He didn't go to the funerals of his colleagues because he feared their families' reactions. Nigerians can be very religious, but are also superstitious. Some rumors spread that Harrison saved himself through black magic. Harrison was also plagued with survivor's guilt, wondering why he was the only one to live. Since the incident, Harrison's experienced PTSD. His wife, Akpavono Kene, says he suffers nightmares. Harrison will suddenly awake, screaming and flailing, convinced that he's underwater. Harrison has since taken a cooking job on dry land and vows to never again take a position on a boat. He made a pact with God when he was at the bottom of the ocean. "When I was under the water, I told God, if you rescue me, I will never go back to the sea again. Never." She was exhausted, but she needed to keep moving. Her head throbbed with hunger. Every part of her body ached. She was covered in mosquito bites and had second-degree sunburns. Her wristwatch stopped long ago, but she tried to estimate how many days it had been since she had fallen from the sky. At twilight, she heard voices and thought that she was imagining things again. But then, 3 men walked out of the rainforest and were stunned to see her. "I'm a girl who was in the Lanza crash," she told them. "My name is Juliana." Born to German zoologist parents Maria and Hans Wilhelm on October 10, 1954, Juliana Kopka had an interesting childhood. Her parents worked for the Museum of Natural History in Lima, Peru. When Juliana was 14, her parents decided to leave the city and set up Panguana Ecological Research Station in the Amazon rainforest. For the next 2 years, Juliana was homeschooled and accompanied her parents on research trips into the jungle, where she learned plant, animal, and insect identification and various survival techniques along the way. Educational authorities disapproved and Juliana was forced to return to Lima to finish high school. In December of 1971, Maria came to the city to collect 17-year-old Juliana, the plan being to visit her father for Christmas. Although her mother wanted to leave sooner on the 20th, Juliana had a school dance on December 22nd and a graduation ceremony on the 23rd. After pleas from Juliana, her mom agreed to fly out on Christmas Eve. Unfortunately, all the flights were booked, aside from one with Líneas Aéreas Nacionales Sociedad Anónima, LANSA. The airline had a poor safety record, and Hans Wilhelm had previously urged Maria to avoid flying with the company, but Juliana's mother thought they'd be fine. Just before noon on December 24th, LANSA domestic passenger flight 508 departed Lima's Jorge Chávez International Airport bound for Iquitos, Peru, with a scheduled stop at Pucallpa, Peru. The first half of the 70-minute, 304-mile flight to Pucallpa was normal. Then the Lockheed L-188A Electro turboprop aircraft, which was traveling at around 21,000 feet, flew into a thunderstorm. A later investigation determined that the crew, feeling pressure to meet the holiday schedule, decided to continue the flight despite the treacherous weather ahead. As the plane dipped and heaved due to turbulence, luggage and Christmas presents fell from the overhead lockers. Scared passengers screamed and wept. Suddenly, there was a bright flash as a lightning strike ignited the fuel tank in the right wing, blowing a hole into the plane. Juliana remembers Maria saying, "That's the end. It's all over." Those were the last words she ever heard her mother speak. The plane disintegrated about 2 miles above the ground. Juliana, still strapped into her airplane seat, spun head over heels, the wind whistling in her ears. She lost consciousness only to regain it and lose it again as she free fell to the ground. Sometime later, Juliana came into the rainforest, wet, muddy, and alone. She huddled under her airplane seat, fading in and out of consciousness for the next 19 or so hours. Throughout the rest of the day and the night, the next morning, Juliana took stock of herself. Her neck, shoulder, and ankle hurt. She had a large gash on her arm, and her right eye was swollen shut. She wore a very short, sleeveless mini dress and one white sandal. Aside from the swelling, she was nearsighted and had lost her glasses. However, her watch still worked and she knew it was around 9 a.m. Maria's airplane seat had landed next to her daughter's, but it was empty. Dizzy, Juliana crawled on all fours and searched the area around her crash site. She marked trees to keep her bearings and called for her mother. Hearing nothing except the sounds of the rainforest, she felt scared and helpless. After some time, Juliana forced herself to stand. At first, she was wobbly, but gradually grew steady on her feet. Thirsty, she drank raindrops off of leaves. She heard planes overhead searching for the wreck, but due to the dense tree canopy, couldn't see them. She realized that she needed to get somewhere wide open where she could be seen by rescuers. Juliana headed off into the rainforest. As she walked, she tested the area in front of her by throwing her remaining shoe ahead, then moving forward to pick it up and tossing it again. Snakes could be camouflaged as dry leaves, and she didn't want to step on one or any other creature. The only sign of the crash Juliana found was a bag of candy, which she promptly ate, saving a few pieces for later. The trek was rough going, with uneven terrain. She frequently had to climb over or squeeze under huge logs that blocked her way. Eventually, Juliana found a small creek and followed it, having been taught that following water leads to rivers, which often means civilization and people. Over the next day or so, Juliana stumbled through the rainforest, following the water as it slowly grew from a trickle to a stream. Other than candy and water, she didn't have anything else to eat. Since this was the rainy season, there was no fruit for her to pick. She didn't have any tools to help her cut trees, catch fish, or cook roots. Also, she was aware that many of the plants that grew in the jungle were poisonous. The days were sweltering, humid, and it frequently rained. At night, the temperature dropped. Juliana cowered under bushes, curled up, shivering in her mini dress. She was constantly attacked by insects, especially mosquitoes. Flies laid eggs in the wound on Juliana's arm. She squeezed it, but wasn't able to get them out. She worried that she'd lose her arm. As she walked downstream, Juliana saw more evidence of the plane crash. She heard the call of a king vulture and suspected that there were dead bodies nearby. Eventually, she came across a row of seats with 3 dead people still strapped in. The passengers had a head-first impact and hit the ground so hard that they were buried almost 2 feet into the dirt. Juliana was horrified. Judging by their clothing, 2 of the victims were men. To make sure that the woman was not her mother, Juliana took a stick and knocked off a shoe of the female corpse. Since the toes were painted, she knew it could not have been Maria, since her mother never used nail polish. On December 28th, Juliana's